Greetings and welcome once again to Refuge Depot, where we address issues impacting our community. We want to definitely address issues where we're looking at sheltering in place, or if you need to build a bug out bag to evacuate. And we see the weather today is very extreme. We see so much going on. And this is just the time for us to really be focused on survival and what we need to do to survive, whether that means that we build up a pantry of non-perishable food and water, or whether we get us a to-go bag. And also, it would be very wise for us to look at what are some of the hazards in our particular area where we live. I know that what we saw going on in Texas is something that was unforeseen. I think they said it was a 100-year historic flood, but that's something that we need to definitely look at, because just because it's 100 years doesn't mean that it won't happen. And that includes earthquakes. Some of us may not believe that an earthquake can strike us, but in all actuality, we may have a fault running right under our state. So that's what this program is here for. And today we're doing the second edition or episode, if you will, of Ask Aaron, and we're talking about when the sirens go off. What do you do? What should you do? What actions should you take? And the actions that you take may spell life or death. And so, with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Brother Aaron, and we'll bring him on up. Greetings, brother.
How you doing today, Steve?
All right, doing well. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, we were going to do this program on the 4th, and I totally forgot that it was the 4th and that no one would probably be watching. And so we went ahead and rescheduled it for this Sunday. So I thank you. And we'll bring up Brother Sanford as well, thanking him for coming on to the program on this Sunday. And before we begin, I wanted to just invite everyone to please like, share, and follow Refuge Depot. As a matter of fact, you can type in Refuge Depot in your browser, and you can follow us on the different various social media platforms, and also visit our website if you need to get any kind of counseling or consultation, or if you have questions about disaster preparedness, you can contact us through our website. And so with that, Brother Aaron, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Okay. Now, I'm going to start off just recapping a short thing on what we said last week. With the chaotic times that we're living in, threats of cyber attacks, terrorism, possibility of nuclear war, etc., we're strongly advising people to prepare. But in preparing, it helps in understanding what's coming and how things are going to react. Now, today's discussion is part two. We're going to be discussing organizations, how organizations are going to react, and how that could affect you. We're also going to discuss locations, what will occur at those locations. And hopefully, you'll be able to adapt and survive, because as the old saying goes, the first 3 days of a disaster survival, and then the fourth day and anything after that is trying to live a life worth living. Now, what people don't understand is the just in time system normally works during good times, but under times of crisis, it is greatly fractured. It will be woefully inadequate to be able to handle supply and demand for people. And in knowing that, that's why we encourage you to prep, is to get out ahead of this. Now, one thing that people don't really understand, and that is the seriousness of something until it happens to them emotionally. I'll give you two examples. Let's say the power grid went down and there was no water coming to your house, and you haven't been able to bathe for 2 weeks. This will be a minor example. If you haven't bathed in 2 weeks, you may not realize it, but you're already starting to degrade emotionally. that will have an effect on you. An extreme case, I'm going to use COVID. If someone you know, a loved one, a family member, a relative, a close friend died from COVID, then you understood the seriousness of it. Everyone else was licking door handles, licking elevator buttons. It was a joke to them because it did not impact them emotionally. So we want you to understand the seriousness of this so it don't impact you emotionally. You can get out in front of it. And then I want you to also understand that in prepping, your physical health is the center of all prepping. If you cannot handle what you're about to go through, you're not going to make it. If running up a flight of stairs to get away from somebody or to get to the top of the steps to take a shooting position will make you pass out, then I don't care how much gear and equipment you got. It means nothing. Your physical health is the center of all prepping. So from there, let's get started. We're going to recap hospitals today, and then we're going to get into the rest of it. Now, as I said last week, in the United States, there's an average of 1.4 beds for every 1,000 people. Okay. In an emergency, that can be expanded by 20% in the form of tents, military tents going up on the grounds, putting people in hallways, etc., but only 20%. The emergency rooms currently work at an 85 to 90% full capacity, and that's on any given week. I mean, they're busy, and only 4% of U.S. hospitals are fully equipped to handle a mass casualty event. And I'll give you an example. They've in a lot of areas people I've talked to, they've been closing hospitals. Even in my area, in the last 30 years, hospitals have closed. And we have probably 4 main hospitals right now. And rough estimate, maybe 2,200 beds available at best. Now, the city I live in has 133,000 people. With that 133,000 people, let's say 12,000 get injured in a mass casualty event or all come down sick at the same time. 12,000, 2,200 beds. They're overwhelmed. The hospitals, and that's the place that common sense would tell you, if I want to get well, I'm going to go to the hospital. But if the power grid's down and the hospitals don't have power, it's going to be medieval medicine at best. And you need to understand that. Most hospitals only store 3 to 5 days of medical supplies because they count on the just-in-time system. Just like every other organization, every other business, they're all counting on it because they don't want to pay for warehouse space. So 3 to 5 days, they're out. And right now, knowing that only 4% in the United States is capable of handling a mass casualty event, and I don't think none of them's in my city, all of them have emergency plans, but not for something of a prolonged nature where people are going to constantly get sick, or a mass casualty event to where, say, 15,000 in my area got hurt or injured and had to rush to emergency rooms. They're already working at 85, 90%. You would not be seen. So your best bet, if you can, and it's what I'm doing in a couple of weeks, I've signed up for a CPR class at one of the local churches. It's free. There's different programs out there you get on. Knowledge is power. You hear that all the time, and that's no joke. Knowledge is power. Learn all that you can. Get as much experience as you can, because if you can control bleeding, you can save a loved one's life or someone that you care about. And the more you know about administering over-the-counter meds, the better you're going to be. You don't want to be reading a medical guideline book when you're trying to stop someone from bleeding that's been severely lacerated. Have this knowledge already in your head. Know that you're getting out in front of this. You're doing this because you see times are going to get harder. And the more you know, the better you're going to be. But the hospitals will be a quagmire. I mean, the hospitals and gas stations are going to be choke points on people. But I'm gonna stop there for right now. I'm gonna allow Steve and Sanford, if you guys want to comment on any of that, you're welcome to.
All right. Yes, if I could comment, bringing back some of the comment from last week. One of the things that I talked about was, hospitals, when if you are in this emergency situation and you do have to go to the hospital, you do have to understand that unless you are in a very critical condition, you're going to be in a long waiting line. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be very upset because they're also in that waiting line, and you may have individuals who come in who may go to the front of the line just because of the severity of their injuries. Another thing that you have to consider is that the hospital is a place where sick people go, so that you may end up catching some type of disease or virus that's in the air. Another thing that you have to worry about in hospitals is what's now called superbugs. Superbugs are antibiotic resistant, those bugs are growing because the food that we eat is pumped with antibiotics because of these factory farms where these animals are raised in close proximity to each other. And so we eat the beef, for instance, that has the antibiotics in it, and that lowers our resistance then to these superbugs. So I just wanted to throw that in there and to say that the best thing to do is to take some type of first aid or CPR class, so that if you're able to, the best thing to do is to treat your injuries if possible, in your home.
Well, I want to remind people as you're talking about going to the emergency room, one of the things that people don't realize if you have a real critical situation, the hospitals are designed and they got a setup for that where they have a special triage for emergency plans and stuff like that. But one of the things that's a rule that the public doesn't realize, if there's a certain amount of people on the property, we lock a hospital down. So you can't even get access to the hospital after a certain amount of people have gained access to the property, depending on what the hospital's preconceived design is. So that's one of the things you have to think about. So you may show up to a hospital and you can't even get on the grounds because it's already have met its maximum capacity of the people they feel they can triage at the moment. So that's one of the things you need to think about too. Just because you go doesn't mean that you're going to be able to be seen. So I think people need to keep that in mind. They also got a couple of things in place when you talked about people's injuries. Well, they have different tents set up. Like Aaron said, they'll set them up in different areas, even outside if they can. And the tents will be marked with certain kind of categories. So you'll see a red X for people who are critical. You see a yellow for people who are in a certain state they might need to be seen and can be saved. Then you got a whole area for people who may be need to be decontaminated, and that's a whole depending on what emergency entails. So showing up at a hospital may not be the best idea just because one, access, two, whatever's wrong with you, they may not be able to see based on what the severity is and the stuff in the environment. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Okay, great, great. Now let's move on to traffic. What we can expect traffic to be like during a disaster. Now, right now, most cities are in gridlock with just normal 10 to 15% traffic. I mean, you got big cities like LA, Atlanta, New York. You'll see traffic just gridlocked. I mean, I've got a relative in Atlanta that told me that he could be going 15 miles from his house and it's nothing but a 12-minute drive, but it might take him an hour and something to get there. And to me, that's just ridiculous. But
It's
and
ridiculous.
that's in the best of times. You're talking
Right.
gridlock with 10 to 15% traffic volume. Now during an emergency, that's going to grow at least by 6 times the current amount. And I'm going to use Iran as an example. They showed on TV them trying to evacuate Tehran. That traffic was at a standstill, and it was like 6 or 8 lanes going straight across. Nobody was moving. And I remember a 1/4-inch snowstorm that hit Atlanta one year, and people were stuck on the highway for miles. And when they ran out of gas on the highway because they didn't top off their tanks and they was riding around just a 1/4 of a tank or less. When they abandoned those cars became roadblocks for the cars that were behind them. And that's a problem that you're going to look at when we get into a disaster situation. You're going to have gas shortages, like the hurricanes showed in Florida. Most of the gas stations didn't have any gas. So if you didn't have extra gas at the house, I mean, you was SOL. The military could use the EMP. Enemy nations could use the EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, on us. That could shut the cars off. Accidents on the highway, uh, people running out of gas, emergency vehicles being on the highway trying to tend to people. That could stall the roads for hours or maybe even days. And that doesn't count a cyber attack where the self-driving cars, like some of the Teslas and the semi trucks that got out there, where someone cyber attacks, takes those over and uses them as ram cars to create accidents on the roads, to block roads. I mean, that's going to happen. So people need to understand that. And you don't want to get caught out there when that happens. And if you do, you better have your get home bag or a bug out bag in the vehicle with you to give you something that you could drink, eat, and keep your body properly fueled and energized for the long walk that may be ahead for you. But I'm going to stop right there for now. If Steve or Sanford, you like to get in on that? Can't hear you, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One of the things that when you talk about traffic, we see it in every movie, right? I mean, in every movie, it almost opens up with the scene of cars being left on the highway. And one of the reasons why is because, especially today, like you said, there's so much road construction that's taking place, particularly, for instance, in Columbus. But wherever you go, there's a lot of road construction. So now you can compound that issue with an emergency evacuation, and you have a disaster waiting to happen. You're going to definitely have road rage, which you might, be caught up in. So you definitely want to try to really avoid the highway if you can, and take a side way, take a back road. And that then requires for you to have a map, not necessarily a Google map, but a literal paper map
Mm-hmm.
that you can navigate on, because the highways are going to be one of the main thoroughfares that people are going to think of, because they're not going to think outside of the box and think of the back roads. So I wanted to just throw that in there.
Okay, Sanford.
Well, the thing I want to say about it is preparedness ahead of time. And men, sometimes we have our significant others, our ladies, and we get on them about letting the gas tank get too low, or your daughter letting the gas tank get too low, and those kind of things. So I think that part of that preparedness needs to be always have at least a half tank of gas in your car. Always do that. In my bag that I keep in my car, I got snack stuff. I got some bottled water stuff. Um, Even have a way, if you need to access and use the bathroom off road, you need to think about that kind of stuff ahead of time. But as you were looking at the video, the guys trying to evacuate Tehran, you can't, man, when it's deadlock and gridlock traffic, are you better staying in place? Sometimes you have to sit back and evaluate that and say, am I better to stay here? Because I can't get anywhere anyway. So when I'm at home, at least I know my environment.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know what's available to me there. So if you have to make a move, um, never let your gas tank get below half a tank. Always have some simple emergency things with you, with blankets and all that kind of stuff. I keep a little bitty first aid kit in my car. You know, the simple things I think I would need if something happened right here, I try to do that. But really, man, it you depending on the will of a whole bunch of other people and other things that happen. Yeah. So I don't know if that transporting yourself or your family during a gridlock situation is advantageous or not. I can't tell anybody we'll stay at home and stick it out. I can say this. Ask yourself what's the most reasonable thing that can keep you safe for the time. And I'll leave it right there.
Okay, I'm still going to add two more things to that. One, during the 2019 tornado outbreak in my area, we had large areas that had no power for weeks. And I remember approaching some of the stoplights, and they had stop signs out there that you're supposed to stop at. When people are feeling stressed, they have no civility at all. I mean, I pulled up and it would be my turn to go, and if I started to go, I'd got rammed. I mean, people was not taking turns. They weren't being polite. They just racing on through. So you got to really watch out for the other person, because when people are feeling stressed, they're not going to be very civil. They're going to be very short tempered. And then I will go beyond that to say to the people who wonder why we keep pushing having a half a tank of gas. If your car is at least a 2005 or newer and the engine has been reasonably maintained, and you staying up on all the work that needs to be done, that car will go 178 miles in any given direction on a half a tank of gas. That gets you a long ways away from a potential disaster. If you had to go and there was no gas stations open along that route, you can go 178 miles. So if your bug out location is within that parameter, you should be able to make it. And I'm going to stop with that category. Now let's go to railways. Now, again, in part one, we talked about the semis being dependent upon diesel to carry supplies to you. Railways, most cargo, especially heavy cargo, moves by rails. You're talking 5 billion tons of cargo a year is moved, which is about 25 to 30% of all freight that is shipped. Now, the railroads are dependent upon diesel fuel, so, and which is the same as the semis. Semis depend upon diesel fuel. So if the power grid is down and they're not able to fuel those trains, there's no way that cargo is going to be able to move. And again, cyber attacks are claiming that they can break into transportation and they can bring that train system to a halt. And China's really bragging about being able to bring down transportation in our country. And I for one, believe they can do it. So I would say, if you think the rail cars are coming and the semis are going to be running from there, if they cannot get diesel fuel to fuel either one, nothing's going to hit that road. And then they got to count on the roads being cleared for them to be able to get through. So with that, I will stop right there.
Yeah, I wanted to just a few facts to read off that, like you were saying, in 2023, U.S. railways moved nearly 1.8 billion metric tons of freight across the national rail network. This equates to about 2.8 18 trillion ton kilometers transported by rail in the U.S. in 2023. Railways account for approximately 28% of all U.S. freight moved by ton miles. So that's that's a lot. And one of the things too to consider right here, as we all live in Ohio, with Palestine, railways also carry hazardous material. and toxic material. And so that's something that needs to be considered as well when it comes down to emergency situations. So I think one of the best things to do is to just once again know where the railways are in your area, because that could be potential hazardous issue in the future.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go back again to when we're talking about this transportation or relying on something. I don't want to jump ahead of where Aaron's going to go, but um, that railway situation should be figured out way before. Your thoughts should be about that way before time, because being able to have goods and services available to you and brought to you, you might as well tell yourself it's going to be impossible. And it may not be, but I'm telling. My thought is you prepare for the worst, and then you can make it through. So, I mean, going back to what our whole initial thing is about, me, I'm not even considering the railways for anything. I'm not considering a truck driving down 75 or 70 or 235. In my mind, that's completely shut down and completely over with. It's completely up to us at this point.
Right.
So, like I said, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I don't know where Aaron's going to go next. But I'm going to say this, and we can go on. Um, you need to have a railway in your community, from the house up the street down to your house, from the house the cul-de-sac down to your house. You need to have a railway community of supplies and goods and help you can offer each other. And I'm gonna leave it right there.
Yeah. And I'm gonna
And
mention
I'll
one of
chime in one
yeah,
more
go
issue.
ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things about the railways and just the infrastructure in America, period, is that a lot of American infrastructure is antiquated. A lot of American infrastructure is really behind most industrialized nations. When we look at the railway system in Europe, or when we look at it in China or any place like that, they have bullet trains while we have Amtrak. And so that's something to consider, because a lot of these trains are coming off the tracks because of them being antiquated. And so when you talk about that just in time system is excellent when everything is running smooth. But when things go off the rails, no pun intended, then that is where you run into a lot of issues of supply chain disruption. And with supply chain disruption, of course, you may have a higher prices at the on the shelves.
Yeah. And I'm gonna bring out one other point for those that are old enough to remember this. When Ronald Reagan was in office, I don't know if people remembered how many looters were jumping on the back of the trains and was throwing out gym shoes and TVs and other things. I mean, trains are going to look like a big fat turkey to looters. And if there's a way they can slow them down so they can board them, the goods that are coming to your city may not even make it because it's going to be looted so heavily bad along the way. So people need to understand that will happen. And from there, we're going to jump into two products, cigarettes and alcohol. We're going to talk about state stores, drive-throughs, what you can expect to see. I mean, is that something that you should stock for a barter item? I would say yes. And I'm going to go back to the Great Depression. When people were in soup lines just to get a bowl of soup to have something to eat, it was considered a luxury item if they could get cigarettes or get alcohol to drink. And for a poor person, that was the only luxury they had. And that might have been a coping mechanism. I don't know. But I do know that there are some that are addicted to cigarettes and alcohol and would barter a great deal of stuff to be able to get a hold of them. I even talked to one person on cigarettes. I said, well, if I stockpile some cigarettes for barter, they're going to go stale after a while. And the guy told me, look, if I'm faced with not having nothing to smoke at all or smoking some stale cigarettes, I'll smoke the stale cigarettes. And I kind of looked at him, but I could tell by the look in his eye, he was serious. So Will people purchase that? Yes. I mean, during the Great Depression, criminal enterprises formed behind providing alcohol and cigarettes for people. And that was during the Great Prohibition period. You were supposed to have that stuff. And man, some of the groups that are still around today was because of that. I mean, the Kennedy family, the old man Kennedy, he was allegedly running alcohol from Canada to the United States. They made their fortune. That's how they started to get their fortune. I mean, cigarettes and alcohol is a product that will move. And with that, I'll stop right there.
Brother
Can't
Aaron,
hear.
I'll let you, Brother
Okay.
Sanford, I'll let you go first.
Well, yeah, I was smiling because the one thing I do know is this: uh, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, baby. That's gonna that's gonna last through time. So it's amazing, man. The most depressed people are gonna find a way to feel better. And I shouldn't say depressed. The people who are the most stressed are going to find a way to feel better, and be that come through alcohol, be that come through a pack of cigarettes, and I don't care if they're the old school Camels with no filter or it's the Marlboro Man. They're going to find a way to get some stimuli going that's going to create a whole other environment. That's going to always be in play. I think you talking about a bartering tool. I think that's something you should have on hand. Period. I'm not even a drinker, and I keep looking here for the next man. I might need somebody to calm down while we trying to figure out what's next. So I agree 1,000%. I also want to remind people, when you think about liquor stores and stuff, liquor stores have a lot of other little supplies in there besides liquor too. Liquor stores maintain water, they maintain juice. You know what I mean? So don't just they maintain snacks. So if you can't make it to a regular grocery store and you see a liquor store en route, I wouldn't hesitate to stop into the liquor store to see if they had some of those other things I may need. But yeah, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, baby. It ain't never going nowhere. All right,
But
brother.
of course, the Muslims, we don't have alcohol or cigarettes. We can't really barter with that. However, there are other items that, as we look into our pantries and look up in our disaster preparedness kit, there are some items that might be of value to people, like soap, salt, spices, other household goods like that, even services. So if, for instance, your wife or you know how to sew, that might be something that people need as a service. Um, there are a number of other different products, like, clothing for children, stuff like that, we would have maybe have sold in a garage sale, but now we're, using it as a bartering tool. So that's something to think about, is just everyday items that you have in your home that people may need, that you can barter with. And as I think we said in some previous shows, any type of skill that you may have is a good bartering tool as well. If you know how to fix a car, if you know how to, uh, wire up a TV with a coat hanger to get better reception, anything, those are good bartering tools.
Okay. Now let's go to the big box stores like a Sam's Club or Costco. Okay. Now it's been predicted, and I've seen it happen during COVID, that those stores would receive an 8 times volume over what their normal volume is during an emergency. And that's a serious increase. I remember during COVID, I was back almost at the back of the store down one of the aisles in line just to check out. You couldn't get a cart because everybody had them, and had the big carts as well. And then I remember walking up to little booth spaces, and products I was looking for was empty on the shelves. And if there wasn't empty, there was a sign there that said limit one per customer, limit two per customer. Keep in mind, Sam's Club and Costco counts on that railway and semi-truck delivery, that just-in-time system. And when they're not getting it, keep in mind, they don't have warehouse space no more. Their warehouse is right there in the store on the upper shelves. So when that stuff runs out, it's gone. And they don't have no more till the trucks start arriving again. Now, they can get a truck in every 2 days, 3 days. And you can usually tell when one comes in because everything looks fully stocked. But during an emergency, those shelves get empty out in hours. And, like I said, those purchase limits are a killer. When you're stocking up, you can have the money to buy, and it don't make no difference. When you get up there to the front, they're going to tell you you're only allowed one, you're only allowed two. So your cash won't mean nothing when there's purchase limits. But again, this is something that you want to go to and take advantage and stock up, buy in bulk as much as you can ahead of time. Sometimes it comes down to a matter of timing, being able to see what's coming, work your money the best way you can, get what you can. Because in the end, when everything goes down, all you're going to have is what you have on hand. These pipe dreams, I'm going to go out and buy stuff day after the disaster or cyber attack happens, and I'm going to be at the store next morning. Those stores ain't going to be open. And if they are, they're only going to be taking cash. So if I was you, as a matter of timing, I'd be stocking up right now on different things that I feel myself and my family will need to make it through a given disaster. Okay. Sanford and Steve, you guys want to get in?
The one thing I want to say, how you talking about like the big box stores like Walmart, like Sam's Club and Costco. The one thing you got to be aware of too, desperate times make people do things, that they wouldn't normally do. So I never forget when the COVID thing first kicked off, and I was at a Myers in Inglewood, and I was walking through the parking lot with a guy. It was jam packed. I didn't even know they had put up some kind of curfew or something. And me and this guy were probably 4 or 5 hours over, and we saw two guys take a whole stack of paper towels away from a lady in the parking lot and run off. At that time, I didn't even know what had really happened. So, when you think about you doing these things at the last minute, you better think about the possibility that it's going to be somebody else who has the mindset, well, I'm not going inside to go and try to get in line and try to wait and see what's available. I'll wait till Mr. So-and-so and Miss So-and-so comes out, and I'll decide just to take theirs because it's a lot easier in their mind to find a victim. So my caution would be is if you wait till the last minute, not only do you have to worry about if you can get it out of the store, can you maintain it back to your vehicle, back to your home? Is somebody going to follow you home? Is somebody going to take it from you before you get to your car? So, that's one of the reasons you do things ahead of time. I'll let it go right there. Steve, you got something you want to say? Can't hear you, brother.
Thank you. I definitely want to veg you back on what you just said about, being out in the parking lot. Definitely that's something that people need to be aware of because just because you purchased the item doesn't mean that you're going to get it home. So you better be cautious and careful. And I think we did a program on that where we were talking about bring a buddy. Really,
Mhm.
don't go yourself. One of the things too we got to think about is that this is what we're calling panic buying. When you have panic buying, you have people who are desperate. You also have people who are looters who might not wait in line. They might just take items and run out the store. And of late, that has been the modus operandi of people who are panic buyers. They don't even wait in line. Another thing that we have to consider is that if you're in a situation where you are panic buying, then a lot of stores may take advantage of that as well. And that's where you have price gouging. And so you might get to the front of the line and think that you're buying these crackers that used to be priced at $4 are now like $10. So that's something to think about as well. And one last thing is that when you're in a situation like that and you're bumping into a lot of people, you may get to the front of the line and find out your wallet is no longer in your pocket. So it's something where, panic buying, the best thing to do is to strive to have as much as you possibly can, like both of you are saying, buy in bulk. Try to have what you need at home. Don't go out at the last minute, because when you go out at the last minute, you're going to have not just chaos in the store, but you're just going to have chaos in the street. It's going to be, it may even be difficult for you to make it back home just because of that drive. So yeah, I just wanted to throw those in there.
Okay, let's go to first responders as the next category. Now, when an emergency disaster hits, they're going to be overwhelmed. Again, I'm going to use the 2019 tornado outbreak here in my city of Dayton. They had 800 calls in a single night. And if you was above 200, you wasn't going to be seen. And you were lucky to be seen at that high of a level. I mean, in the United States, you have 65% of firefighters are actually volunteers, which when I found that extremely interesting. I thought that was a high paying job. If the power grid goes down, there's no electricity to pump water to your house. No water's coming to your house. There's no water going to the fire hydrants. So without water, fires will go unchecked. There will be no way to be able to contain a fire if one breaks out. Now, in my area of Dayton, we have 314 career paramedics and firefighters. They provide fire suppression and emergency medical services to the population here in my city. Now, we have 12 fire stations that are strategically located around the city. But again, without no water, they're not going to be able to do very much. And I would go so far as to say the paramedics, again, they're counting on having so much inventory on hand. Just in time only allows them to carry so much inventory. When they run out, they're out. I mean, there's not going to be much that they could do for you if they show up. So again, have certain things yourself, know how to do first aid, and hope that if help arrives, that they have enough inventory to be able to help you out. But in a city of 133,000, we only have 314 that are career professionals. And that's not very much in the event of a mass casualty situation or a mass pandemic. And with that, I'll stop there.
The one thing you want to think about when you talk about first responders, well, we just talked a minute ago about traffic. Just a simple ability for a first responder to get from one area to another may be virtually impossible just from traffic. That's not including any other circumstances, so this is one of those things. And since you mentioned fire, this is one of those things, I'm a firm believer if you can do it ahead of time. Brother Steve said something about bulk. Well, if you got to buy one thing this week and then one thing 2 weeks from now, I think you need to do that. If you got a neighbor or two, and what's different, when we grew up, we knew everybody on the street, 2 streets over, 3 streets over. We knew everybody. We knew Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Piner. Our parents knew everybody. And so we typically not build those kind of relationships now. That's unfortunate. But if you can start building those kind of relationships and find out who may have some kind of skill with that, or who may have fire extinguishers in the house and know how to use them, you can buy a little bit at a time. They got these things that are real popular now. They're called fire blankets that deal with some small fires, and you can buy them in a pack of 5. I mean, like really cheap. You can order them off Amazon, that Temu or whatever. You can order them off there. But I think the key for all of it, I'm gonna go back to what I said before. Start doing a little bit at a time now. But if we waiting on the fireman to come, I don't care if it's 10,000 of them. If they can't get to you, it's not going to do you any good.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
just going back to what we said 2 or 3 topics ago, just about transportation itself. We got to be practical. And you got to put your thinking cap on. You got to realize it's not necessarily that nobody's coming to save you. They may not be able to come and save you.
Mhm.
So I don't want you to even have the mindset that they're not willing. They won't be able, because there's going to be so many other things happening.
Mhm.
Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I want so I definitely agree with both of what you're saying. And I wanted to add to that when you have a situation where you're looking at first responders, one of the first things is are you going to even be able to connect with the hospital or the emergency room to even allow them to come out, because the lines will most likely be jammed up with individuals trying to get through to get the first responders to their homes. And then, like what you all are saying, then you have the traffic that's there. And we just talked about how the roads might be difficult to navigate through in an emergency situation. So now you have, an ambulance trying to get to your home, or even trying to get you, once it gets to your home, trying to get you to the hospital. Might be some difficulty. Then we talked about how when they get you to the hospital, you may not be the first patient in line. You may have to wait before you're treated, depending on the severity of your situation. So, once again, I think that, first aid classes, being stocked up with your first aid prep materials is very important, and to have some knowledge of how to treat certain injuries without having to resort to calling an ambulance.
Mhm.
I want to say this real quick too. Aaron mentioned about he's going to be taking a CPR class here that's provided by one of the local churches. If you can't do that, I mean, if you got a phone, that means you have access to YouTube. If nothing else, Google some general things involving first aid and involving fire protection in your house. You use that phone, use that laptop, use that Kindle, use that iPad. So if you don't have the time, or you're not willing to go out and do those things, I mean, if nothing else, start getting a general understanding of certain things. You may not have a tourniquet, but there are a lot of things you can use for a tourniquet to stop bleeding. So look up alternative ways to provide some kind of medical assistance, and just do those things now. Just like a simple little search every now and then, look up something and find something new. So I'm saying that to say, don't be caught in the box. Think outside the box. Use Chat GTP and just ask the question like you hearing it, like you feel it, and see what comes up. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention too. Don't get caught up in a box saying I got to go to this class and I got to find something. If you can't afford to do that, if you don't have access to it, nothing prevents you, if you have that phone, for just taking a few minutes and looking at that every day, looking up certain little things. You can look up how to filter your water. A lot of little things you can look up. I just want to bring that to the forefront.
Right. And I'm going to add to that by saying, if you have a tourniquet, that's going to be for your extremities, arms, and legs. If it's a hit to the body, you're going to pack the wound. If it's around the neck, it's going to be pressure on the wound. If you're trying to stop the blood, still, hemostatic agents like Quick Clot or Bleed Stop are great. It gels the blood, helps it to be able to clot. And there's other things that could be used. But again, take the classes, get familiar so that you know what to do and you're not second guessing yourself. And with that, we'll move on to the next category. That's
Let
going to
me
be,
say,
go ahead,
if
Steve.
I can just veggie backing off of what you just said, When you're in a situation of extreme stress, one of the best things that you can have on your side is know-how.
Mhm.
If you have that know-how and you practice what you learn, then you'll be in a much better situation to address that situation without, fumbling and panicking, and because that's the situation where you just really want to remain calm. You want to remain calm not only because you want to be in control, but you want to remain calm because the person that you're treating doesn't want to feel like they're about to die. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Okay, great. And with that, we'll move on to the next category, which will be guns and ammo. Now, before I had someone ask me this question, I'm going to answer it here. Never trade guns or ammo as a barter tool. You're giving somebody, if they get desperate enough, the ability to overwhelm you, and they will use that against you. So those are two items right there you definitely don't want to use for barter tools. But we'll go on from there and say ammo is going to disappear fast. I mean, in fact, I'm going to use COVID as an example. When COVID came out, Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's sold out of entire calibers in under 24 hours. Ammo sales tripled overnight and shelves were empty for months. I don't know if people remember that or remember certain calibers you couldn't find no more, and it stayed that way, like they said, for months. I I was in lines outside of some of the gun stores just to get in. We're outside stretching a ways, and they would let only so many people in and lock the door, and you're just out there in that hot sun baking. And then they a few people come out, they let a few more in. The line just moves slow as hell. Um, I mean that lasted for hours. I never seen nothing like it in my life. And along with that, you had supply chain disruptions due to that just-in-time failing in both lead, brass, powder, and primers. And that lasted for years after COVID was over with. And because most of that comes from overseas and things just wasn't being shipped. Just in time totally failed in that category. Now I'm gonna come back with something at the end, but I'm gonna let Sanford and Steve talk.
You can
Yeah.
go ahead, Brother Sanford.
Well, this happens to be my area of expertise. I I think about during COVID, one of the things I found interesting, they limited traffic to what they call essential personnel, and certain businesses that could remain open were considered essential. One of the things that was open every day were the gun stores and gun ranges. And so they consider that essential because people suddenly found the need to learn how to protect themselves, or get some kind of tools to protect themselves. And people spent millions of dollars as quick as they could because they thought in their mind, I had to be able to protect what's mine and what I have right here. Um, I'm an advocate for buying a little bit at a time when it comes to this. So, some of the most popular calibers are 22, 9 millimeter, 38 special, 45. Then you got people buying 40 still, but you want to keep in mind if you're going out, and you may not be a gun enthusiast. I'm not encouraging anybody to go out and just say, go gun crazy, but I do think it's important to understand that the gun has, or the firearm has, different ways of helping you other than just defending yourself. It may be a way for you to survive because you may have to hunt for something. So if you buy a 22 caliber, you get all kinds of what we consider would be small game, from rabbit to squirrels to whatever you could catch. If you could catch a pigeon, you'll eat it if you if you feel like you're starving to death. So I'm a big advocate for buying um, ammo now. I'm a big advocate for buying, if you can't afford, if you're not like me or some other people who are gun enthusiasts, buy a fundamental firearm, and it may be a caliber that most people will have, like a 22 or a 9 millimeter, and the other one is a shotgun. And you can get a shotgun that will shoot different kind of what they consider shot. So it can be from buckshot to to bird shot, which is used for hunting small game, to slugs and double eye bucks you may use to take down a deer and defend yourself with also. So, one, I'm a firm believer that every household should have some kind of way to protect themselves and some kind of way to go out and field some game if they needed to find a way to eat. Um, I'm also a big advocate for being trained and knowing how to use those tools because if you don't know how to use them and you have them, they're more dangerous than not having them sometimes. Um, I'm also a big advocate for what Aaron said about you never use those items for bartering. You never do that because desperate times make people do desperate things, and they will be used against you. If somebody knows that you have access to those things and you don't know how to protect yourself, or you're not willing to protect yourself, or you don't have them stored correctly, they're coming to get them because they're going to need them. So I think when it comes to firearms and training, those are things you need to do now in small little segments. Just go back to what we say about be ready so you don't have to get ready. It was interesting because after the COVID thing, when people panic bought, the gun stores got flooded with the used market because people felt like, oh, I don't need this gun now. So they went out and bought $700-800 gun, $500 gun, and they got pennies on the dollar for what they paid for it. And it was just a bad investment from that standpoint. They never learned how to use them anyway. So that's a just in case thing. I think learning how to use a firearm and having one or two, and every responsible adult in the house should know how to use them first of all. And if you have kids, you should teach them gun safety because you never know what's going to happen. I'll leave it right there and I'll wait till Aaron comes back and I can elaborate a little more.
Okay.
I think
Can't
that
hear
was
you.
excellent.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
You're fine.
I think one of the things too, of course, in the nation where we don't carry arms. However, we will if the situation presents itself, take the arms from the individual who has the arms and use it against them. So, like you said, I think one of the things to do is to at least know how to properly handle a firearm. I think another thing that people may not think about is that when you do get in a situation where you may have to use that firearm, for a lot of people, it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to pull that trigger. And so I think some that might be something that individuals may want to train on as well, so that if they do get in that situation, they won't hesitate to take that uh, advantage and utilize it. Of course, another thing to do is to know what other weapons that you may have in your home. Don't discount that large cutting knife that you have in the drawer, or any type of weapon. I think we talked about some other type of weapons that are covert weapons. We talked about a comb knife, and other different type of weapons like that. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
And I'll say that I've been asked a question, how many guns should I have in my house? Is one or two enough? And I always tell them no. I recommend a 5-gun arsenal. Okay. One would be a scoped high powered rifle. Why? Because if you're out in the country somewhere and you got line of sight that you can see a distance, you can actually engage and hold them back before they're even in range to use their equipment. If you have a high powered scope rifle and you can put down extreme accuracy. Second gun, either an AR or AK platform rifle. And if you can't afford that, then get you a carbine that will hold high capacity mags. Because if you could throw a lot of lead down range, you can hold some people back. Third gun, 12 gauge pump shotgun. I've had people say, well, auto's faster. Yes, but an auto won't shoot the variety of tactical loads that are out there. There are also reduced recoil loads that you can get, and it'll choke up in an auto but a 12 gauge cycles everything, 12 gauge pump. So, and then for perimeter defense around your property out to 50 yards, it's the best perimeter defense weapon that you can have. Then next would be an auto pistol, and then a revolver. And if you have someone with very low experience of shooting and you could teach them how to reload, then I feel the revolver would be best in their hands because it's more simpler. It will not jam. There's not as many moving parts. It's just a better gun for someone that's less experienced. And then the auto pistol could be in somebody's hands that's got a little bit more experience, that can change magazines quick and keep staying in the firefight if there has to be one. But 5 guns minimum, the more the better in my book, but 5 guns minimum. Sanford, you want to jump in on that?
Well, I'm not going. I'm not going to disclose what I really think about you, how many you ought to have. But I'll say this: we have a general rule in my field that for every weapon, firearm, we're going to talk about firearms right now, that you may have at home, you should have at least 2,000 rounds of ammo for each one of those weapons, and that's kind of what we say emergency for each weapon. You know, buy a little bit at a time. There's some resources online that you can buy. If you spend a certain amount of money, you can get free shipping. Start doing that a little bit at a time. And I'm gonna go back again to being trained because
It's froze
malfunction
up.
of a firearm. We good? Okay. The malfunction of a firearm, and if you don't know how to put it right back to put yourself in the fight, it's no good. So the minimum training should be the safety. That's for first and foremost. The ability to use the firearm and the ability to fix the firearm during mild malfunctions. Those things ought to be just paramount, and that's just the foundation for them. You know, the when to shoot and not shoot, that's a whole different thing. You know, sometimes we think because there's an emergency situation in our mind that we can just pull a trigger. That's not true because every time you let a bullet go down that barrel, you're going to be held responsible for it. Now, I understand the thought process. If it's an emergency and it's your life or your family's life at jeopardy, you're going to do what you have to do. I'm never going to discard that. But I always want to put out there, you need to have some understanding of how the laws work and what you are legally allowed to do sometimes and not illegally allowed to do, because we can let our emotions override our logic and do something we can't take back. So as you get a firearm and you get some fundamental training, you know, you need to get some legal understanding of what you're capable of doing, you know, and that's for, and you know, different firearms are suited for different places. You know, if you live in an apartment where you're connected to somebody else, or a condo where you're connected to somebody else, well, there's certain firearms of certain calibers you may not want to use because of over penetration or them going through the walls and hitting the neighbor. So you may want to have certain calibers or a certain kind of weapon for that. If you're in a rural area, bullets can travel a long way. So, you know, you need to know what calibers you can use that may not create that kind of problem. So there are a lot of different variables that go into it. So I believe first and foremost, having a gun or a firearm is the most important. But learning the perimeters that go along with it, like I said, the safety, the handling, the how to handle malfunctions, the laws that go along with it. You know, I think you need to be well versed because it's a serious thing. So most people buy and say, I'm gonna get a gun. That's what happened, like I said, during COVID. People just went out and bought guns. I mean, and spent big money and had no idea what they were doing. So be responsible, get some training, and start buying the stuff now. Because Aaron brought up a good point. When the stuff happened, you couldn't get ammo. You couldn't, some places you couldn't even buy guns. It was amazing. I got a buddy that was a manager at a pawn shop, and I hadn't talked to him in years. And he told me that when it happened, he said, man, they sold out of guns in the pawn shop. He said in the first 8 hours that they were open. Every gun they had in the pawn shop, except stuff that seemed like it was so antiquated, were already gone because people thought they were going to be cheaper. And they went and spent that high dollar for it, and they did just what Brother Steve was talking about earlier. They price gouged in certain places. So something that they may have that may have had a value of $200, they were charging $600 for that, and people were gladly paying it. So I mean, get some education now about them. And you can contact us, through our information here, and I'll be glad to give you any information you need for a resource for you or your family to help you. Okay, I'll let it go right there. Your sound is off, Steve.
I was going to say that was excellent. That was good information right there.
Okay. Did you want to add anything, Steve? Are you ready for me to go on to the next category?
Yeah. Brother Sanford really covered some good ground with it. So
great things that he said. Okay, let's go to pharmacies. Now, in the best of times, the pharmacies maintain a 5 to 7 days of meds on hand at any point in time. The pharmacies are totally dependent upon just-in-time system. Now, you got to keep in mind that 80% of all medications are manufactured abroad in China and India. We don't hardly manufacture nothing here in the United States. Now, there are some people who can't get who, if they don't get their medications, they're not going to survive. You have people on insulin, for example. If they cannot get that medicine, they're not going to live very long. People on heart meds for their liver. I mean, they need these things to survive. And then you have over 40 to 44 million Americans that are on mind control drugs, Thorazine, lithium, different things of that nature that helps them be controlled, to be able to have self-control. Without it, they could become quite violent on the streets. So we're talking 40 to 44 million. That's no joke right there. That's when you hear somebody say, I'm preparing for the zombie apocalypse, that's what they're talking about. And way to do this, to get out ahead of this, is to do what I've done. I've talked with my doctor. I asked all my prescriptions, can he prescribe them 3 months ahead? So when I go, I'm not getting just 30 days of prescriptions. I'm trying to get 3 months ahead. So if something happens, maybe I could reduce my dosage a little bit and stretch it out to 6 months. If that doesn't cause me any ill effect, I'll put it like that. But maybe a situation will be over with in a period of months, short period of months. So you got to be stocking up on your meds if you're on them, especially if they're life-threatening in the event that you can't receive them. So I'm going to stop right there at that.
That's good information. Yeah, definitely. And we're talking about the pharmaceutical. So I just like what you just said as far as being able to really try to get ahead of the situation and get you maybe a 3-month supply if that's possible. So I think that people should really look into that, start looking into that now, because it seems as though laws are always changing. So I would definitely try to look into getting something like that, especially for individuals who may need that medication when the time comes, because sheltering in place without that medication is not going to work. And so yeah, that's definitely going to be good. Another thing too is, once again, when you look at when stuff hits the fan, the pharmaceutical, when you look at these movies, and a lot of these movies people should really maybe pay attention to, because what they're really pulling off of are real life experiences. And what you see in the pharmacy, what you see happens in the pharmacy, is that people will break into the pharmacy and steal those items that they need when emergencies hit. So if you go to the pharmacy, you may not find the item that you're looking for. They may not have it in stock just because of the um of the what's the system called again, Brother Aaron, where they have it
Just in
on
time, just in time.
just in time, right? I mean, like you said, the just in time system is a very good system, and until an emergency situation happens. So I just wanted to chime in and say that.
Okay.
I want to say this too, and I say this all the time. If you're blessed enough to have medical benefits and insurance that can provide you the stuff you need, I say this all the time. Make yourself regular appointments, and if the doctor offers you a certain kind of medicine for a sinus infection, for any kind of thing, and you don't feel like you need it, get it anyway. Get it anyway. They typically got a shelf life of a year. Get them and keep them. Don't not take them because you can get them. Because you receive them don't mean you have to take them. Get them, stock up. Also learn some alternative things, because there's a lot of things that you can take that are natural that'll give you some of the same effects, towards your body from a medicinal purpose. Start looking those things up. But if you have people who are diabetics who need insulin to live and stuff like that, and man, if you get an opportunity where this insurance or the doctor provides a way for you to get quote unquote extra, get the extra and keep it. Don't get caught up. I'm telling you, keep it. A lot of people will say, well, I don't need it, I can wait. No, don't wait. Trust me. Get it and keep it, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. So there's certain things we have to have in our household, and I'll tell my wife, you order as much of it as you can. Yeah, because just in, and even if it's available, if it can't get transported to you, what good is it? I'm gonna go back to that transportation thing. So if it can't get to you, what good is it? And Brother Steve, you brought up a good point about how the movies really portray real life stuff. So I was thinking about Civil War, and one of the scenes when it first happened, when it first kicked off, the family went to the pharmacy because they had a son who had a life-threatening condition, and people were rampant in and out of there, and they broke in the pharmacy and took the medication that he needed. And the mother said, I was not leaving without the medicine that he needed. So yeah, it is a real thing. And I think you need to, if you got a chance, if you can get something extra, get it. If you can find alternative things that are natural to help a certain condition, stock up on those. You got to think. Thinking ain't legal yet. And you really got to do this ahead of time. Yeah. Right. Because if it happens, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put that out there. If you have an opportunity to get extra supplies, get the extra supplies.
And then there's a product I'd like to strongly recommend to people if you can afford a $250 pinch on your wallet, and that's a JACE case, JASE. You can look it up online. When you order a JACE case, it will come with 5 antibiotics, because I'm telling you, during a disaster, there's a good chance that you or your loved one could end up consuming contaminated water or contaminated food that with simple antibiotics would cure that situation. Otherwise, it will become life-threatening in a very short time, or they could get a cut or a scratch that becomes infected, and those antibiotics would be vital. So if you can afford a $250 pinch, look up JACE, JASE, a JACE case online, because those are valuable to have on your shelf for an emergency. Okay. And
also want to throw in there too, there are a lot of quote unquote animal antibiotics and stuff that's designed for your pets that are perfectly okay for humans to consume. It's the exact same thing, just have different dosages. So, that's why I'm saying about find alternative ways to get the medication you need, because you can find antibiotics for fish, for dogs, for cats, for horses, all the stuff. Yeah. So if it's available, I'm telling you, a place you may not think about, like Tractor Supply, may have some stuff that you can use that you can take as a human that will work just fine on you. So keep that in mind.
Because during times of war, when they run out of human meds, veterinary meds are commonly used at the hospitals at that point to treat the wounded with. if they don't have any humanitarian aid coming in. So that's a very common practice. Okay, let's get into military enforcing law. Now, it's a known fact that the National Guard will hit the street within 48 to 72 hours. The worst thing that we could hear is that they will suspend habeas corpus. If the government makes that decision to suspend habeas corpus, then martial law is in effect at that point. Now, under martial law, they can hold you without charges. They can arrest you without a warrant. You're not going to get an attorney, and they can hold you almost indefinitely. And hopefully nobody's doing any summary executions, because military ain't looking to be running a bunch of prisons if they don't have to. Civil unrest or something major goes down, or the United States starts to be invaded or something of that nature. When you hear that habeas corpus has been suspended, your civil liberties are now gone. And this is best advice I can give you: stay off of their radar. Stay informed. Have a radio where you can hear what's going on, or TV, and it has to be a trusted news source. You don't want to be getting news from the wrong source, and you go out and do something, and there you are getting picked up. And at all costs, avoid confrontations with the authorities during that period. If martial law is declared, you do not want to get on their radar. You do not want to get into a confrontation with them. Now, primarily, they will be tasked with defending critical infrastructure and continuity of government, but they're not there to bring you food. I can tell you that right now. So stay off their radar. Don't get in confrontations with them. Understand that they've got a purpose that they're going to do, and that's to keep and instill law, and the continuity of government. But just know that your civil liberties are gone once martial law is declared. I'll stop there for right now.
Brother Aaron, if you had anything to say to that one.
You mean Sanford?
Or I'm saying Brother Sanford, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well, I mean, he said it all. I want people, I don't know if people know what habeas corpus actually is, but it's saying you got a fundamental right to be judged in a particular way by the system of law. And that can be, as Aaron said, that can be suspended in case of emergency. So how they can tell you, I'm going to change the law to make it safe for this environment. So when they tell people doing riots to stay off the streets, okay, you have a fundamental right to go out in public on the streets. Well, they can suspend that, and guess what happens? If you violate that suspension, then you're going to be treated like a criminal. So I just want to make sure people understand exactly what habeas corpus is. I know a lot of them may have heard the term and not understand exactly what it is, but it's pretty simple. Aaron made it real simple. Stay out the way. Yeah. Ain't no sense in being seen and being heard.
No way.
Yeah. You don't want no attention drawn to you. You don't even want to be the nosy neighbor looking out the window. Nope.
Right. Yeah, I agree with both of you. And once again, this is why it's so important for us to have our homes prepared. And when I say prepared, I mean prepared as far as food and clothing, but also prepared as far as entertainment, board games. We rely a little bit too much on these phones, which will run out of energy if we don't have a way to recharge them, which I would also look into getting some type of solar powered backup or some type of alternative energy source. But definitely have board games. Definitely have just things that can make your home a sanctuary for an extended period of time, because you definitely, when things are chaotic out in the street, you may have snipers, you might have any type of things that are going out in the street, and you just don't want to go out there. You definitely want to stay away from any of these type of camps that they might tell you, hey, come to this camp and we got a nice little bed for you here. I think that your bed is best. So, you know, the best thing to do is to make your home a place where you can shelter in place and you won't have to go to these camps. I mean, because when we look, for instance, at Katrina, you know, they were in that dome, and you would have thought that that would have been a great place to be, but the bathrooms weren't running. They had no security, so any children that were walking around could have been molested. I mean, this can happen if you're taken to any of these type of camps. So I would definitely look into trying to shelter in place.
Okay. And then from there, we're going to go on to distribution centers. These are the central hubs that that supply all the grocery stores and the big box stores. Okay. If trucking stops due to cyber attacks, fuel shortages, road blockages, resupply to grocery stores will stop at that point. Now, the distribution centers, they all rely on just in time. I mean, that system is fully integrated throughout our lives, whether people have heard of it or not. And the National Guard themselves may post up at some of those distribution centers to adequately direct where some of those supplies may need to go. Now, when the distribution centers cannot, or say during a crisis, the distribution centers are going to have a problem because they're not going to be able to meet the supply and demand needs of the population. And that's going to cause a huge price increase right there by itself. If supply is short and demand is high, prices are going to go through the roof. So you got to have that emergency fund on hand because things are going to get expensive, and you don't want to get caught short or with your pockets empty, or you don't have nothing but pocket change around the house, because that's not going to go nowhere. And no one's going to take a check from you. No one's going to take your credit card. It's going to be cash only. And then, like I said, 6 months later, it'd be gold and silver. So just know that those distribution centers that we take for granted, we may not even know they exist. We just know about Walmart, Costco, Kroger's, Myers, uh, Sam's Club, but we don't see the distribution centers. When supplies don't come to them, all distribution to the stores will cease at that point. And with that, I'll stop right there.
I just want to touch real quick when you talked about the cash. You know, we said this before, but you know, small bills, small bills make more sense because if something is $7 and you got a $20 bill, they're gonna tell you they can't make change. So now, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna pay the whole 20 and lose the 13, or you know, because you got no other option? So everything you said is 100% correct. Dealing with distribution and the places that will be available, the places that you may even know about. But my thing would be have a way to finance that and do it in small denominations. So ones, fives, and tens. You know, I think that's so important. And I'm gonna go back to what I've been saying before. I can't say it enough. Do a little bit at a time. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people are economically strapped. You know, so if you can save $20 and $20 in ones this week, you do that. If it takes you another 3 weeks to do it, you go ahead and do it. I don't want anybody to get frustrated and say, "Well, I can't accumulate this amount of money, or you can't do this amount of stuff immediately," and then not do anything at all. So, to me, I would much rather people do small chunks and start putting it together that way. You know, I got a little thing. I got a little plastic Coca-Cola bottle that me and my wife we take and put change in, and when it gets full, I take it to a credit union, and then you know what I do? I get $1 bills for all of it. Last time it was like I think $147. I got 147 ones. You know, and just off the change. And that change took about 5 months to accumulate. So I'm just saying, anything you could possibly do to do it a little bit at a time to help yourself, where if something happens, God forbid, it's not like an instant strain on you or your family or somebody you know. I'm telling you, take the steps now, because the bank ain't gonna be open then. you're not gonna be able to go to an ATM machine. So if you can do that and get whatever it is, the small amount ones, and put it up, do that. Do that.
I just love what you just said, which is gradualism. Start off with saving a can here, a small can there, put it in a place where, you won't, just out of sight, out of mind, and just build it up and build up your water, and like you said, have it a gradual type of thing. Try not to do it all at once because it's economically taxing. And with that, it becomes frustrating. And with that, it becomes a no-go. You just stop doing it. And
Yeah.
so if you do it gradually, before you know it, when you open up that door and you see all this supply of food, that's you're going to be so happy that you went that route. So I just wanted to say I definitely agree with that. And as far as the distribution centers, like you said, brother Aaron, they're the same really as the grocery stores. They just have a more of a supply, but not that much.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you have to look at too is that the distribution centers, once they get to a certain point, they're only going to be delivering to a certain amount of stores. So the store in your neighborhood may not even be stocked. So, like you were saying, Brother Sanford, you might want to think about, this major outlet store that's in this economically advantaged neighborhood because they're most likely going to deliver there because those people they know are going to have the money to purchase the items. So I definitely agree with what you all are saying with those things.
Okay. And at this time, we've basically covered the locations and categories of part one and part two. I want to do a closing statement right now that I say is my best advice I give people. And that is right now, get out in front of what's coming by stocking up on all the products and medicines, over the counter meds, different things that you're going to need now, toiletries, any of that nature. Get as much additional training as you can in first aid, gardening, communication, self-defense tools, learning how to make basic repairs, etc. The more knowledge, the better. And no matter how much gear and equipment you have, the most powerful tool is basically you. Okay. So get as physically fit as possible through exercise and diet. And remember, when disaster strikes, all that you have on hand is all that you will have to work with, nothing else. And with that, I end. Can't hear
Yeah,
you.
you, brother Steve.
Okay.
Sorry, Brother Sanford, did you want to have any closing comments there?
Uh, I'm gonna keep it real simple. Aaron put it all in a nutshell, but I'll say this. You know, we always say, you know, be ready so you don't have to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about your physical well-being, and I'm telling you, work on your mind too. There are a lot of people out here, man. I I found out how many, and I'm gonna talk about ladies. How many ladies are taking what we would call "be cool" medicine for depression or anxiety and stuff. And I'm saying work on your mental state because if now it's tough, if something happens, the stresses can send you over the edge. So, if you got a faith based thing, whatever it is, get focused on that and bring that to the forefront where you can use that. I'm all about the physical thing, and I don't care if you get out and walk a half mile a day, but you need to create a different kind of stamina and different kind of mental toughness because it's going to take all that. Because when stress comes upon you and things are not going the way you think it should go, man, you'll find yourself short tempered with the people you care about the most. If you got kids, you'll be short tempered with them, and they're just being children. If you got a spouse, you'll be short tempered with her or him. So take care of your mind. Take care of your mind and do a little bit at a time. As I'm saying, I really believe this. I'm telling you. Now it was funny because I had a buddy of mine that works at a particular place, and he had seen the last show we did, And he said, saying, I'm coming to your house. And I use Aaron's line. I said, you can't come to my house. That's why I'm telling you now. So now, don't think you just come to saying, no, 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 baby. That's all I'm going to say about that.
All right. That was excellent. And so I guess I'll close this on out. I wanted to just let the people know. I want to thank Brother Aaron and Brother Sanford for just another just excellent program with a wealth of information. And if you have, and if you desire to get your home prepared for any type of emergency situation, I'm gonna put the number up where you can text us. You can also, of course, go to our website, and I'll put that up as well. But if you want help preparing your home, preparing your apartment, preparing your family for disaster preparedness, just text us at that number and just text help disaster preparedness, and we'll reach back right back out to you. We just started our Substack, and we would love for you to follow us on Substack at Refuge Depot. And there we will just put a wealth of information out for you. And right now, what we're focusing on is the heat wave, how to survive in a heat wave. There are a number of different things. And every community is affected different by heat waves because some communities have more trees, which, of course, causes the temperature to be a little cooler. But then some communities are just surrounded by concrete, which makes it a lot warmer. So we'll be putting that information out. And with that, I'm going to close this on out. May God continue to bless you and your family with the light of truth and understanding. And come back and visit us where we usually do our program on Friday, every Friday around 8 o'clock. So with that, thank you. God bless.